HQ meet and greet sessions on the air. We here with a legend. Yeah, we here with the guy. This guy, you see this guy say, "Oh, is it him?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's him." So let me represent you here, Frenchy Cannoli, with HQFM. He's a big friend. He is a big person, and let him share his word. Thank you for coming here. We're humbled and stoked to have you here, brother.
And it's coming to family when I come and see you. So
thank you.
I'm really happy to be here and to be with you guys.
Thank you. So, first of all, we go always towards our roots, first of all. So please tell us, yeah, Frenchy, it says a lot, but yo, I don't know, tell us your story, your roots. Where you come from, what's up with your fam, if it's cool.
I'm a Frenchy, I don't fake the accent. And when I was a kid, I always wanted to travel. When I was 18, I traveled for 18 solid years. I kind of took my retirement up front. And because I was fascinated by the story of producing country that I didn't know they were hash producing country when I was a kid. A lot of my 18 years of travel were defined by 3-4 months seasonal where I would go, make my hash and to smoke on the beach. That's
hard life.
No, it's like, when you don't know your future and you want to make sure that you do what you like the most before anything else.
We're talking about 80s?
So, yeah, 70s. 70s and the
best.
It's always different. Even in my time, the older generation were telling me that it wasn't the same. Yeah, it's never the same. It's called evolution. So it's like it all depends what you're looking for and what you want. If you want to be in remote places, you just have to go a little further than what I did in the 80s, but you can still get lost and live in cave and shit in the Himalaya or on deserted tropical beach in the Philippines or Thailand. Huh?
Thank you. That's what's up. I'll be short on the first question. Are you enjoying Masters of Frozen? I mean, first of all, I remember last year, first time you were judging Masters of Frozen, you said, David, please, come on. Just, come on. This year you were like, all right, I'm here on duty every day, 11 o'clock. I mean, he is the judge. This guy is the judge. He's here on duty. He's hash soldier.
I was on duty last year, but I had only 3 days. 55 entry in 3 days was like really, really rough. So this time I came ahead of time to make sure. No, but it's like, as much as I don't compete, I really understand what comes into every one of those little plastic sealed bags. So it's like the minimum respect that you can give to the people who try so much is to give it a good shot to know what they're offering you. You know what I mean? It's like it's a minimum that you have to respect, especially when the competition, basically the value of it's all based on the quality of the judge. If those judges, doesn't matter how big names they are, do not care for it, it's like it's not. You need to have that both sides because.
Comparing to last year, levels up.
Yeah, but in between I had the Emerald Cup. Okay. And Emerald Cup was bloody high. Here, for the moment, there is a few great, a lot of good, and only 2. Yeah. But I'm not sure if the people didn't try to do THCA though. And that's if you
diamonds, Jams.
I've not seen really diamonds yet, but if you want to enter THCA in a rosin competition, it's really hard. You have to reintroduce terp. Otherwise, it's like fucking dry, not so good looking. It's like, yeah. And you don't have that terp that personally, it's all in the mouth and the experience of smoking that I...
Are you saying that when you get THCA or let's say diamond and sauce with a non-solvent technique using rosin technique, you're losing terps on it?
No, when it's THCA, because there is little terp, little taste, and you enter that in a competition, you put yourself at the disadvantage. Because part of it, it's taste and smell, okay? 2/3 of it. So, and on top of it, the guy is giving you THCA. THCA, it's a medicine. It's not something that you really smoke. So it's like, I can appreciate the tech and the knowledge that come behind, but it's not going to compete well when you have like 70 entries. I don't know how many do you have altogether. I'm almost there, but you know what I mean. It's like everything else is a lot about taste and smell. So when you enter a competition, you have to think beyond what you like. You have to think that you're trying to please others. You know what I mean? Once you impress me, then you want to show me your what you really can do with a rosin press. Cool, because I have a lot of respect for it. But you put yourself at the disadvantage otherwise if you do that.
Family is the people you grow with. You have worked with Hashishans in different parts of the world. How do these families work and how do they pass on their mythology and knowledge to others? Why it's so important? Can you just brief talk about your mythology, how you pass it to other fams?
You have to think that those people literally invented the game. They realized that they were all the power of the plant into little excroissance that the plant produced that they couldn't see with naked eyes. Okay, if you backtrack yourself in the history of concentrate in America, well, 10, 12 years ago, you were throwing your trim away. You had no idea what really resin was and its value. It was just part of a bag up here. So imagine the knowledge necessary to our ancestor to realize that all the power was there and to create a methodology that could collect it.
It was hard.
And on top of it, they even had methodology of pressing that could preserve resin through time. So it's like when you work in this producing country, the knowledge is passed down from generation after generation. And a foreigner like me, when you spend months in a row making ash alongside them, I had questions, but my questions were always answered. Yes, that room where they keep their bundle of flour for months in a row before making, before sieving. Why do you do that? Because it makes the resin better. Yeah, now I know there is a polymerization that happens. There is a chlorophyll that change into sugar. Now I have that knowledge. They simply know what is best. So what you receive as a knowledge is fact. That this is the way because that way has been gone through thousands of generations of hashishing. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. Hash history is here. Frenchy, you have taught so many famous cannabis figures, but do you think it's really important to pass on the techniques to other generations through university studies? I mean, you know, like through different academic structures to teach about rosin, cannabis, in universities, especially in countries where cannabis is legalized?
Yes, because you need education. There is so much misinformation that is all over, that you need some source of education, some source where somebody who wants to learn can go pick up data and be pretty confident that they are valid data. They may not stay valid for more than a year or two, and then when there is an evolution, you put the new data that is valid. But we need this type of source, even if it's not a university but a online platform where you would have the best of the best who share all their knowledge. The cannabis industry is weird because when you get something that bring you that makes you a little bit different, they don't want to share. It's really
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, please call me in my dark room. Nobody can switch off the cameras.
So it's like I can appreciate that, but at the same time, it's even business-wise, financially, if you can create a product that is unique and you're the only one making it, your circle of around you, it's pretty small. The people who are going to know what you're doing and your potential of customer is pretty small. If you teach that to 10 people, you have 10 times more people who knows about what you do. And the more people you teach, the more people knows about what you're doing.
It comes in short time.
That goes automatically with it, because nobody's going to recognize anything that doesn't blow them away.
Yeah.
So quality is mandatory. It's like
quality over quantity.
Yes, because for the moment it's the only way to be recognized. Like in the wine industry, in the beer industry, in the cigar industry, in the food industry, you have stuff that are basically killing you, especially in the food side, and you have great products. When you have the mean, you're going to buy organic products that taste amazing. If you don't have the mean, you're going to buy at the cheapest place you can find it, and you don't know really where the product is.
Okay, all right, thank you. We go on with the next question from our followers. Can you tell us a bit about your ice water sieving technique? A bit, yeah. Well, it's a lot. About your ice water sieving technique in the hash making process, a bit.
So I use water, but I sieve at the same time. So it's using water. It's the only evolution in a methodology that is most certainly as old as agriculture. But everything I do with water has been defined by my knowledge of dry sieving. And even the person that created that revolution, Mila, she received a machine, a big metal machine from a guy from Laytonville, actually, from Mando. The first guy who came out with the water story. And he had a big container with a filter at the bottom and 2 egg beaters basically at the top.
Yeah.
And a tap. And she started to sell some of them, but the filter was breaking. So, because she's a seamstress, she was trying to find a way to compensate. And she created the bags. And when she created the bag, to use the water, it's an evolution because you don't have a brittle material. You have a supple material that you can agitate until there is no resin anymore on it.
Yeah.
When you use a brittle material, every time you agitate a bit more strongly, you create more contaminant.
Okay.
And the quality is defined by the cleanliness of it.
Yeah.
When you use water, this is out of play. And sieving is made of 2 processes in one methodology. You have your your sieve material, your tool, and over it you have the cannabis, the trim. You agitate so that the trim move over the sieve, so that the head break from the stock. When the head break from the stock from agitation, they fall on the screen and they separate through the meshes of the perforation of the tool. So you have two processes, agitation and separation, in one methodology that you cannot separate. Mila, the day she made those bags, she actually separated those two processes. And now you can fine-tune them. Now I could create a super bombast full metal jacket machine and use my bag, full bag mesh, as my tool, as a sieve, so that I can maximize the two process to a level that wouldn't exist if it wasn't water and Mila tripping.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for sharing, really. Let's talk about, it's surrealistic for me, but cannabis legislation in France. Are there cannabis clubs there too?
No, there is nothing. I don't live in France. I hardly speak French. I cannot think in French and write in French. It's bad. It's pretty bad. It's always been. It's not as bad as when I was in my 20s, but it's pretty.
It's pretty the same when they ask me about how is it about weed situation, cannabis situation in Russia. I'm like,
Yeah, that's basic.
Bad.
Yeah, that's basic.
Tell us about your new project and docu-series, French Dreams of Hashish. It's a good one, right?
Yeah, because this is something that's became something else. At the beginning, because a lot of people were asking about the workshop. So there is a lot of people who cannot access me. Doesn't matter if I travel or not, or who don't have the means to pay for the workshop. So because I had some video of showing what I do, not teaching, just showing, and people were telling me that they learned from it, I thought, okay, I really need to make film the workshop professionally and make the workshop in front of the camera for the guy who's going to actually see it online. And I was introduced to two super amazing young filmmakers. And while we were doing that project, we decided to make a little 15-20 minute promo, Jiro Dream of Sushi style. Something like
Fuck is delicious.
Slow motion, like really hardcore porn of what is
food porn.
Hash. And when
hash porn
to do that, it's very fast become I need to introduce the farmer too, because I'm so dependent on everything from my farmer. I'm a representation of his quality.
That,
So it became more chef table, where you have like the chef showing a lot of the restaurant, but there is half of the story that is really the farm. And from this it became more and more and more the farmer before legalization and after legalization. So that now I have actually 4 documentaries of 90 minutes that I would like to condense into that a series too slow for the moment. I want something condensed 90 minutes of a trailer that it's non-stop. If I can bring that much intensity and the message into it, then I can attract investment and go more into introducing my life with the farmer and going back in a producing country. I have been and I've invited by the local to come back and teach them what I learned in between. So it's like, this is that little project becomes something so huge that now we are talking to bring into Sundance and asking for $500,000 investment to finish, to do the cutting and more. You know what I mean? It's way beyond me. It's into Madame Canolian and Jack, the filmmaker.
Thank you again, bro. Thank you for coming here to share your experience with our members. We really appreciate and respect your input in cannabis world nowadays, because your input in hash world and you know, like the word you spread about the hash there over the ocean is important. The work, the input you've done, you know, the approach. Because nowadays, yeah, everybody's talking about hash in this form or other form, in rosin form maybe, but it's still all these new forms of hash. This is what I think, right?
There is only one type of hashish, and it's something that not only you need to respect tradition somehow, and that word can be traced at least 1200 years down.
Yeah.
But hashish is a product that when you press the resin, the bodies that created that resin become part of the resin. It's like wine. You cannot make wine if you don't crush it with the skin and the seeds. You need the bodies that created the sugar and the juice to be able to make the magic happen. And wine, it's an alcohol, but when you can make alcohol from grape, and then you get into the distillation world, you come into the extract. When you take the juice from the apple, you leave behind what created the sugar in the juice. When you take the resin from the resin head, you do the same. You leave behind what created all those cannabinoids and terpenes. So it's still the plants, but it's not quite the same. You leave behind a big part of the equation. When you make hashish, that part is part of the mass of hashish, and it's going to be transformed by the terpenes that are corrosive and the resin, and it creates something that is different and most of the time greater than loose resin head.
Totally. Thank you very much for sharing this. I appreciate it, bro. Thanks a lot. Once again, here, HQ Meet and Greet sessions today, tonight, with Frenchy Cannoli here. Just one message to HQ members.
If you're young, you have to think that you're the next generation, and there is a lot of responsibility on your shoulder because you're working with this plant, and this plant is going to change the planet. And if you want a future, you better work with this plant in the most organic and healthy way, because otherwise your future is going to be very short.
Thank you. Okay, with that.